If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. In a world of war and dragons, the small village of Seles is attacked, and for unknown reasons a young girl named Shana is taken. Not having a clue what's happening in his hometown, Dart, who's slowly making his way back there after being away for 5 years, hears some soldiers riding by on horses, and because he's curious he goes to see where they're headed. They see him, and since he doesn't look like a regular person, the red armor is a clear giveaway that he's not a farmer or some other type of regular job holding man. Two of the soldiers try to question him at spear point, because it's always smart to start conversations by threatening people. Since he's clearly a fighter, he pulls a sword of his own, but we don't get to see him fight the men because a green dragon shows up. Dart does the only smart thing that you can do in that situation, and that's run away. He's not fast enough to get away though, but lucky for him, a woman in some of the least practical armor you can find, since it covers only one of her legs, snatches him out of the dragon's path, and the two of them hide until it leaves. Dart's grateful to the woman for helping him avoid getting squished, but she's more interested in figuring out why the Emperor would use a dragon to take down such an insignificant little village. Seeing as how it's his home, Dart runs off to try to help his people, even though the woman says that the village has already been destroyed. As he runs off, the woman is shocked to see that the stone she has resonated with Dart for some reason that she can't believe, but that'll probably be important later. He races off to Seles and sees that the woman was right. It's been completely destroyed, but there are still Sandoran soldiers there tormenting the survivors. Dart finishes some of them off and stops them from killing a villager, who lets them know that despite there being a truce, the Emperor attacked the city anyway, and for some reason his people took Shana. The man dies shortly after that, but Plos, another man who Dart saves, lets him know that the whole attack was just so they could take Shana, but he's not sure where they took her, so Dart decides to beat the information out of the soldier who was leading the group that took his village. Because the Empire didn't really expect much resistance from Seles, they didn't send their best, and Dart not only kills their leader, he gets the man to tell him that they took Shana to Hellena prison. Once he makes sure his village is cleared out so his people can start rebuilding, he heads to the prison to free his friend, which won't exactly be easy, but he's still gonna do it. Apparently Hellena prison doesn't really work too hard to keep people out, because Dart just hides in the back of a merchant's wagon and rides in. Granted, most people are trying to break out of prison and not into it, so I guess the security would be better on the inside of the prison. The place is run by a giant warden named Frugal who has no problem killing his own men. I never understood how criminals kept people working for them when they murder their own people to show how bad they are, but I'm guessing $20 is $20. Dart gets through the place without setting off any alarms, partly because a knight from Basil named Levitz broke out of his cell and tried to free some of his friends. Unfortunately, they get killed anyway. After Levitz deals with his friend's killers, he sees Dart and mistakes him for a prison guard and attacks. Dart holds off the attack for long enough to tell Levitz who he is so the man will stop trying to impale him. Once they realize that they don't have to kill each other, the two of them deal with the guards that show up, which gives them a bit of time to catch their breath and talk. And the first thing Levitz wants to know is what would make someone break into a prison. When Dart lets him know that he's there to rescue someone, Levitz decides to hold off on getting back home to report to his king about what happened so he can help Dart find Shana. One, because he thinks it's a noble cause to try and save a friend, and two, it'll be easier to get out of there if he has someone guarding his back since security is picking up after all of the fighting that's been going on. Shana's in a cell that's heavily under guard, but with the two of them fighting together, they take them down and free the woman. Dart and Shana spend way too much time talking since they haven't seen each other in years, which gives more guards time to show up. Dart and Levitz deal with them too, and much to Dart's surprise, Shana has learned how to use a bow since he last saw her, and has no problem shooting people with it, which is a good thing considering their current situation, but it's still a little bit serial killer-esque when you really think about it. Word of Shana's escape reaches the warden, who after killing the person who gave him the bad news, sets his people to search for her and to kill the people who broke her out without harming her, mainly because the Emperor and his black-robed subordinate will kill him if something happens to the girl. Frugal himself goes to wait by the horse stables, which is the only way out of the prison. Since that's the way Dart and his crew had to go, they come face to face with the overly large warden who had ordered the attack on Seles. Emperor Dole had just told him to kidnap Shana, but Frugal had ordered the village destroyed just to make the whole thing a little bit more interesting. The guy had a whole town slaughtered for fun, which makes Dart and the others have no problem trying to kill him. Somehow he survives the fight, and instead of sticking around to try and finish him off, Dart, Levitz, and Shana hop on horses and escape the prison. Frugal sends out a message to put his soldiers around the area on high alert, which makes it impossible for the trio to get back to Seles the way that Dart had come from. So they decide to head off in another direction where they are still getting chased by the soldiers. Levitz gets hit in the leg with an arrow, which forces the group to find a hiding place until the soldiers head off to search somewhere else. Shana apparently learned a bit of field medicine since she had expected Dart to come back to the village in pretty bad shape, so she's able to patch Levitz up, and by the time she's done, the soldiers from the prison have moved their search somewhere else, so they're safe for the moment. Since they have a bit of time, Shana wants to know what Dart's been doing that kept him away from home for 5 years. He had left to hunt down the thing known only as the Black Monster that had destroyed the village known as Neat and killed Dart's parents 18 years ago. He had only been 5 when the thing had attacked, and he and his parents were the only 3 people who made it out of the village. But his dad had gone back to see if he could save anyone else. And since they were both terrible parents, his mother left her 5-year-old son alone to go after her husband, and they both died there. When Dart finally built up the nerve to follow them, the entire village had been destroyed, and all he found was the stone that his dad used to always carry around with him. He's been keeping it as a memento ever since. Even though he searched for 5 years, he still didn't find any leads on the monster, and since he's been away for so long, he has no clue what's going on in the country. Levitz, being a knight and all of that, is more than up to date on current events. The kingdom of Basil, where Levitz serves, is at war with Sandora. There had been a truce between the two countries when Dart had left, but during that time, Emperor Dole of Sandora got control of a dragon somehow, and that gave him the upper hand, so he started conquering more territories. Having seen the green dragon up close, Dart can see why having something like that on a leash could be a problem. Levitz didn't know that the dragon was so close by. With that new bit of information, he needs to get back to King Albert in the city of Bale ASAP, otherwise they might have to deal with a sneak attack from a dragon. He figures that it might be a good idea for Dart and Shana to come with him since one of the scholars at the castle might know more about the Black Monster. Since he doesn't have any other leads, and Shana's basically gonna go wherever Dart goes, the two agree to go with Levitz to meet the king. The path they had to take leads them through a cave that's not exactly safe, since it's the home to a very large snake. They deal with it, but with its last breath it attacks Shana. The others are too far away to get to her, but they don't need to since light pours out of her body and burns the thing to a crisp. That falls on the list of things that don't happen every day, but since none of them can actually figure out what happened at that moment anyway, they all head to Bale. The king is happy to see that the rumors of Levitz dying weren't true at all. The two of them had been friends since they were little kids, so it makes sense that he'd be worried about the man more than he would a common soldier, and he definitely wants to know what happened to Levitz after his squad was killed. So the knight tells Albert how he had been captured and taken to Hellena prison, only to escape with the help of Dart and Shana. Since they helped his friend, the king offers to give them whatever they need. So Dart asks the king if he'll keep Shana guarded in the castle since the Emperor of Sandora is hunting for her. Shana doesn't want to stay there though, and since Sandora has a dragon, the king's not sure how safe she'll be there anyway. Right now, his people are preparing to hold off an attack at the town of Hoax, but if the dragon can get past them, it'll make a beeline for the castle, which would be extremely bad. He doesn't think there's any place in Serdio that'll be safe for Shana, and since she wants to stay with Dart anyway, that's probably the best solution. At least she can be happy while she's being hunted. Since that's a favor that he doesn't really need anymore, Dart asks for any information that they have about the Black Monster. There's not really all that much, but they say that the monster started popping up in history 11,000 years ago when the Dragon campaign ended, and from what they say it had killed a god, which means an angry man with a sword probably can't kill it even if he finds it. Dart doesn't even know what the Dragon campaign is, so the king's minister tells him the story since there's actual information on it. A very long time ago, a race known as the Winglies ruled over the world and used all of the other races as slaves. Naturally, the slaves didn't like that all that much, so they revolted under the leadership of a man named Diaz who had 7 dragons serving under him. With the people and the dragons following him, the war known as the Dragon campaign began. It was bad. A lot of people and Winglies died, and by the end, the new rulers of the world were humans. And that was when the Black Monster appeared. The minister finishes the story right when a man walks in to let Albert know that it's time for his war meeting with his generals. That includes Levitz, so Shana and Dart take some time to enjoy the view and talk while they wait for Levitz to finish. When he's done, he does have some good news for his new friends. Most of the people from their village survived the attack, but there's some bad news too. Sandora is getting ready to launch an all-out attack, and they're planning on using the dragon to do it. Levitz is being sent to Hoax to join the knights there in an attempt to hold off the dragon, and after thinking about it, Dart decides to join him. He'll put off his search for the black monster until the war is over, and since he's decided to go, Shana's gonna go too. So the three of them head to town to get everything they need before they head off to do battle with the dragon. Since the decision's been made to head off and fight a dragon, Levitz thinks it'll be a good idea to go and see his mom before he sets off. Considering the fact that he may be being digested by a dragon in the next few weeks, that's probably a good idea. And since Dart and Shana have nowhere else to go, Levitz brings his new friends with him to meet the woman who birthed them. She's very happy to see him since she hadn't heard from him in a while. He makes it seem like he was just held up because of all of the fighting, and not because he was in a prison a few days away from being executed, because that's just not the type of thing that you tell your mom. Especially considering the fact that Levitz's father had been a knight too, and he had died in battle. When she sees Shana, she figures that Levitz has finally found himself a wife on his travels, which is great because she wants grandchildren, but since Shana's Dart's girlfriend, even though he seems not to know it yet, she's kind of off the market. Once that little bit of awkwardness is out of the way, Levitz lets his mom know that he's being sent to the town of Hoax and he needs to leave in a little while, but she convinces him to at least stay for lunch since it's almost done. Shana goes to help her get everything set up, which leaves Dart and Levitz with nothing to do while they wait. So Levitz gives Dart a tour of the giant house that's a sign that Albert pays his knights very, very well. Levitz had always wanted to be a knight just like his father, and he would always go on the roof when he was younger so he could stare at the castle, dreaming about the day when he had earned as much honor as his dad had. He achieved his dream, and when he realized just how hard it was, it gave him a new respect for his dad. The two of them talk until the meal's ready, and after they eat, Levitz figures that it'll be for the best if they just rest and head out in the morning. There's no point in leaving at the dead of night since the town of Hoax will still be in just as much danger in the morning, so the group enjoys one last good night's sleep before they head out. When they make it to Hoax, the first thing they do is go and check in with the man in charge, a knight named Kaiser. He and Levitz know each other from way back, so after he gives his condolences for Levitz's lost squad, he gets introduced to Dart and Shana. He's already heard about how Dart rescued Levitz from Hellena prison, even though Levitz was in the process of escaping when Dart got there. Regardless of the details, the one thing he knows is that Dart can fight, and since his people are still getting prepped for the attack from the Sandoras, he won't turn down any help, especially since he heard that they might use the dragon to attack. He was debating between hitting them first or waiting and reacting to what they do, and Levitz thinks it'll be better to do the latter, which means they'll need to set the guard up in a way that they could spot the invaders before they reach the town. Kaiser's pretty sure that the attack will happen in the dead of night, so he decides to put Dart and Levitz on the night guard duty. But while Shana can fight a little bit, she's not a soldier, so he thinks it'll be better if she stays out of this type of battle and helps get the meals ready for the soldiers. She knows her strengths, so she's okay with that, although Dart's not exactly enthusiastic about eating her cooking since apparently that's not one of her strengths either. Kaiser sends Dart and Shana out to learn their way around the fortress town. That way they won't get lost when things get bad. Levitz already knows the place, so he stays with Kaiser so he can get the details about their troops. Once they've got a feel for the town, they head back, and Kaiser sends Dart and Levitz to their position at the back gate. Just like he predicted, when night hits, the attack begins, and things immediately go crazy. The good news is it doesn't seem like the Sandoras used the dragon, but they did send a giant named Congo who is more than strong enough to bring down Dart and Levitz. He's about to kill Dart when the woman who saved him from the dragon comes flying in, quite literally, to save him. She activates the red stone that Dart had been carrying around with him, which turns out to be something she calls the red eye of the dragon. It transforms Dart into a Dragoon and he easily overpowers Congo. Seeing their giant friend get knocked out makes the soldiers decide that it's best to retreat for now. Congo isn't unconscious for long. He's a little harder to kill than that, but he's not ready to go another round at the moment, so he runs away too. Shana comes out to see if everyone's okay, and with the fighting done, Dart transforms back to normal and passes out. When he wakes up, he recognizes Rose as the woman who had saved him before since she's back in her regular one-leg covering set of armor. That's twice now that she saved him, but this time she did it because she was curious about the Dragon Eye Stone Dragoon spirit that he had, mainly because she has one too. Both stones glow, which according to her means that the people holding them were born to wield the power of the dragons. They don't glow for just anyone, and only those select few can draw power from them. Rose hadn't known if the stone would transform Dart or not, but if it hadn't, then Congo would have killed him. She seems to know a lot about the Dragoon spirits, and considering the fact that most of that knowledge was lost, Levitz wants to know where she learned so much. The stories he had heard in the castle said it was the Dragoons who led the humans in the Dragon campaign, but it didn't say much else about them. She doesn't tell him where she learned it all, but she does admit that the other reason she helped him is because his little group of friends reminds her of the crew that she used to travel with years ago. Unfortunately, they're all dead now. The conversation is cut short when a soldier comes running into the town looking for Kaiser. He's shouting about the fact that the 7th fort out in the marshland is getting attacked by the dragon. The two knight groups that are stationed there are severely outmatched and they need some help. The dragon apparently had its nest in the forest that's blocked by a place called the Volcano Villude. The fact that the Sandora sent a member of the Giganto race to attack one place and a dragon to attack another makes Kaiser think that this war can't be won by just humans. Rose agrees. It doesn't matter how many knights they send at the dragon, they won't be able to beat it. But a Dragoon can, and between Dart and Rose, they have two of them. Granted, Dart won't be much use if he passes out every time he transforms, so Rose gives him a crash course in all things Dragoon. Then the group heads off to the Volcano Villude. When they get to the place, the very first thing that they see is a firebird, and the thing immediately sees them and tries to attack. They run away deeper into the volcano, which, in case you didn't know, being that close to lava without serious protective gear would have melted the skin off of their bones. But we'll just ignore the video game logic for this one. Shana starts to hear something calling to her and she runs off, which is top tier stupid considering where they are. The others chase after her, and they find her staring at what looks like a giant statue that's laying in the lava. But the thing's not a statue at all. According to Rose, it's called a Virage, and it's still very much alive. Way back in the Dragon campaign, when the Winglies were outnumbered by the dragons, they summoned their own creature to counter them. Those things were the Virage, and even though the Dragon campaign was 11,000 years ago, the Virage isn't dead, and sensing Dragoons in the area, the thing wakes up and attacks. It's not all that dangerous, probably because it's been comatose for 11,000 years, so the two Dragoons put it down, knocking it back into the lava where it melts away into nothing. This gives the crew freedom to move on further through the very inhospitable volcano. Apparently they aren't the only ones wandering around in the area, because they hear a badly dressed guy screaming for help. I don't know how, but he ended up dangling by his vest over a drop that would have definitely killed him. His name is Dabas, and he's a merchant from a place called Lohan. He had heard that there was something in the area called the Burning Gem. It's apparently worth a lot of money, and since he likes money, he decided to look for it, but a brush with death made him change his mind and he thinks it's about time to head home. Dart and his crew head in another direction and run right into the firebird that they had hoped to avoid. It blocks their path, so the only thing they can do is fight it. The thing's not as deadly as they thought, so they put it down, clearing their path to the place where the battles won't be nearly as easy, the nest of the green dragon Fabran. When Dart and his crew head into the forest that serves as the dragon's nest, they immediately realize that something's wrong. There are no soldiers around guarding the area, and that's because the entire place is so full of poison from the dragon that everything is either being mutated by it or just dying. Shana starts to feel the effects pretty fast, but after resting for a minute she starts to feel fine. The smart thing to do is get out of the forest before she gets sick again, and that means they need to hunt down the dragon, which shouldn't be too hard to find since it's about 30 feet tall. It doesn't take much for the group to stumble into the heart of the dragon's nest, but what they find there isn't the dragon but a man named Graham. Levitz knows him very well, and to put it simply, he hates the man, and for good reason. He had served under Levitz's father until he had betrayed him and got him killed along with a lot of other knights. Levitz plans on killing the man for it, but that might be harder than he expects it to be, since Graham is apparently a Dragoon. Rose isn't exactly shocked by that, since only a Dragoon can order dragons around, so there had to be one there giving Fabran orders. The green dragon shows up, proving that the man can control it, which is an impressive feat, but Rose is more interested in finding out where and how the man got his Dragoon spirit. Like most villains, he's all too happy to talk too much, and he tells her that he got his powers from Dole, who got it from Emperor Diaz. That's kind of impossible since Diaz died 11,000 years ago, but Graham doesn't have a reason to lie, nor does he care if she believes him or not since he's about to kill them anyway. He tries and fails, which leads to Graham being fatally injured. Even dying, the man still manages to talk a lot, and he tells Levitz that he turned on his dad because he was jealous of how strong he was. His jealousy made him look for power elsewhere, which led him to working for Emperor Dole and turning on his country. That's a pretty flimsy reason to betray your friends and family, but it doesn't take that much for some people. Regardless of the reason, he got what he deserved, and he dies, which causes the Dragoon spirit that he had used to choose Levitz as his new master. Rose thinks it's strange that their little group just so happens to have yet another person who can use a Dragoon spirit, but she doesn't get to dwell on the fact because the poison finally starts to get to Shana. Unlike Dart, Rose, and now Levitz, she's not immune to it. She's in pretty bad shape, which means they won't be able to cross the volcano again, so instead they head to the trade town of Lohan that's supposed to have a fantastic doctor there. With it being such a large city, it makes sense that they'd attract some of the top people of different professions. But even the doctor, a man named Sanator, has never seen dragon poison anywhere other than in books. The poison attacks the mind more than the body, eventually causing the brain to shut down. Unfortunately, there's nothing he can do to treat it, and if she's not treated soon, Shana won't last a week. There is a plant called the Dragoon plant that's said to help with dragon poison, but the plants are as rare as dragons, so Sanator has no idea where it is. With Lohan having so many people coming in and out of it, Dart figures that someone should have heard about the thing, and it turns out that someone has. That someone is the treasure hunting merchant Davos, who Dart just so happened to have saved recently from falling into the volcano. He doesn't have the plant, but he says that it should be found to the shrine in the north of the poison-filled forest. When Dart, Rose, and Levitz make it to the shrine, the first thing they notice is a sculpture of a dragon that glows along with the Dragoon spirits, which means that there's a Dragoon, or at least another one of the stones holding the power of a Dragoon somewhere in the ruins. That means that even if the Dragoon plant isn't there, the place is still worth a visit. Unfortunately, the shrine isn't exactly uninhabited. Aside from the random monsters, a man named Gehrich has set up a lot of traps to keep people out. When Dart and his group make it past the traps, Gehrich decides to deal with them himself to stop them from stealing the treasure that's hidden there. Up against regular people, he might have had a chance, but fighting 3 Dragoons doesn't end well for him. When he goes down, the spirit of a woman named Shirley, who Gehrich was really trying to protect, shows up, and she wants to know why Dragoons are bothering her. The ghost actually recognizes Rose, and she seems shocked to see that the woman's still alive. She understands why and how after a minute, but she doesn't explain it to the rest of the group. Dart doesn't take time to try to figure it out anyway. He just wants Shirley to give him some of the Dragoon plant. Shirley didn't even realize that the dragons were still alive, but unfortunately she doesn't have the plant that can cure their poison. She does know of another way that Shana can be healed though, and it's with the white silver Dragoon spirit that she just so happens to have. After asking the group a few questions about their goals and motives, Shirley deems them worthy enough to take the Dragoon spirit, and she shows them how to use it to heal. By using its power with one of the other spirits, the healing can be drawn out of it, and Dart tests it by healing Shirley's guardian. Having passed on the Dragoon spirit to someone worthy, Shirley fades away, and Dart and the others rush back to Lohan to heal Shana. Dart sets the spirit down next to Shana and gets ready to use it, but before he can activate it, the thing powers up on its own and heals Shana, something that only happens because Shana, as a surprise to no one, is also a Dragoon. With Shana healed and the dragon dealt with, there's not all that much for Dart and his crew to do outside of wait around until King Albert goes on the offensive, so that gives them a bit of time to relax. There's a tournament called the Hero Competition coming up soon, and it has warriors coming from all over the world to compete. Since the winner gets the title of the strongest man in the world, Dart decides to join in. Levitz, being a knight, is forbidden from joining, and Rose won't because she's such a good fighter that she doubts anyone there can beat her, so Dart joins alone. After Levitz tells him not to turn into a Dragoon during the matches for obvious reasons, he heads off to the waiting area, where he sees his old teacher Hashel knock some guy out who's talking too much. Dart hasn't seen him for a while, but Hashel can see that his former pupil hasn't gotten soft since they went their separate ways. That's good because the old man has no intention of going easy on Dart. He does want to know how Dart's hunt for the black monster went, but they don't get the chance to catch up since the matches are about to start. Dart beats his opponents and makes it to the finals where he expects to fight his former teacher, but Hashel actually lost to a swordsman named Lloyd who's apparently really strong. He's also not all that friendly. Dart meets him before their match, and he's not exactly the talkative type, but what he's lacking in social skills he makes up with combat prowess, and he proves that he's a way better fighter than Dart by beating him easily and taking first prize. Being known as the second greatest fighter around isn't a bad thing, so Dart heads out to celebrate and introduce his teacher to his friends. Hashel, just like everyone else, immediately sees that Shana has a thing for Dart, and he's kind of shocked that Dart hasn't figured that out himself. But he's not exactly traveling the world to play matchmaker, so his pupil's love life isn't all that high on his priority list. He's actually been looking for his daughter who ran away a long time ago. While he was out hunting for her, he had come across Dart, who was in the middle of his own hunt for the black monster. That was about 4 years ago, and after that they started traveling together. But even after going their separate ways, neither one of them have actually completed their mission, and it'll be some time before Dart can get back to his hunt, because a wounded soldier from Basel comes stumbling into the city with some bad news. King Albert's been captured, and they took him to Hellena prison. Levitz wants to run off and break into the prison immediately, but charging off without a plan won't help the king at all, So Haschel calms the knight down by giving him the universal anesthesia of a really hard punch, so they all can take the time to plan their next move calmly. While Levitz was unconscious, Haschel went and got a bit of information, and it turns out that the situation is even worse than they thought. The entire city of Baal has been taken over, so the only knight that's even free to try and save the king is Levitz. The attack had caught them off guard, and to make sure that the people were safe, King Albert had given himself up. There's no telling what they're planning on doing to the king, so Dart and the others don't have much time to waste. Haschel decides to put his hunt for his daughter on hold for a bit to help out. Since he's been looking for her for nearly 20 years, a few days on a side quest won't hurt anything. So the group heads off to perform yet another prison break from Hellena. Frugal, who hasn't gotten any less crazy than he had been the last time Dart had broken into the place, is planning on executing the king despite the fact that he's supposed to keep the man alive. He's expecting Dart and Levitz to try to show up and save him so he can kill them too, which all goes against the agreement that Albert made with Dole. I don't know why people think sacrificing themselves will make people fulfill their promises to them. Once you're in their hands, you don't exactly have any leverage anymore. So once they break their word, there's not really anything you can do about it. Dart's break-in gets noticed immediately, and because Frugal apparently took a page straight out of Jabba the Hutt's playbook, he drops the group down into a pit where a monster that looks a lot like a rancor tries to eat them. Had there not been 3 Dragoons in the group, it might have succeeded, but there were, so they killed the thing and escaped the pit. They all managed to get to the top of the tower just in time to stop Frugal from killing Albert. They deal with the crazy warden, but while they were fighting, a man in a robe shows up and pulls a stone called the moon gem out of Albert's back. It doesn't hurt him because of some magic mumbo jumbo, but that doesn't stop Levitz from turning into a Dragoon and attacking the man. He pulls out a sword that Rose recognizes as the Dragon Buster, something made specifically for dealing with all things dragon, and he stabs Levitz in the chest. His hood falls off and it turns out that the man was Lloyd, the same swordsman who had wrecked Dart only a few days ago. He runs away, but not because he was scared, since he obviously wouldn't have any problem taking Dart and his group. They don't even try to chase him since they're more worried about Levitz, but there's nothing that they can do for him. He dies and the Dragoon spirit leaves his body, but surprisingly enough it chooses Albert as his next wielder. While they saved the king, they lost a friend in the process, and they can't even take his body to bury him since they still have to get out of the prison. They escape and hide in the ruins of Dart's old village, where they mourn their lost friend while trying to figure out just what Lloyd is plotting. Albert has no idea what the man is planning, but he can at least explain what it was that he took from him. And like everything else, it goes back 11,000 years to the time when the Wingleys ruled the world and the Dragon campaign took place. When the Wingleys lost the war, they disappeared, but their sacred relics were scattered around the world. The things were magical, but their powers could only be accessed by the Wingleys, and one of those items had been handed down in Serdio and sealed away inside of the body of each and every king. No one outside of the top brass in Serdio even knew about the moon gem, but Albert had hired Lloyd as an advisor after he worked as a spy for him. Apparently he was already working for Sandora long before Albert hired him, which put him in the perfect spot to launch an attack on the nation, and once he took the moon gem, he'd be free to give it to Dole, and the man wouldn't even have to conquer Albert's kingdom after that. He would be the lawful ruler. That's a pretty stupid system. You basically have to steal the king's crown and you become king. Granted, the crown is inside of his body and only a handful of people know it exists, but if it's that important, there is no way a new hire would ever know about it. And that makes Albert handing himself over even more stupid, but everybody makes mistakes. His just cost him his kingdom and his best friend. While he doesn't have an army or a home to go back to, Albert is a Dragoon now, so that doesn't mean his fight is over. He's just going to take a different approach and attack Emperor Dole himself at the Black Castle. Dart and the others decide to go with him, if for no other reason than the fact that they knew Levitz would want them to do that, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. While they're planning their assault, Lloyd has already made it to the Black Castle, and things aren't exactly what Dart and the others think they are. Lloyd isn't working for Dole, it's the other way around, and the man has plans far bigger than what even the Emperor understands. Getting to the Black Castle isn't all that difficult for Dart and his crew, but the city around it is filled with Sandoran soldiers, meaning it won't be easy to get inside, especially since the knights are quick to round up anyone that acts even slightly suspicious. Fortunately, in a city that's controlled by a tyrannical army, there will always be people who are willing to rebel, and Dart's crew comes across Popo, a member of the new Serdio party. Once Albert introduces himself as the king of Basil, something that really isn't a smart thing to spread around in a place where pretty much everyone is his enemy, Popo gets really excited because his people have been waiting for King Albert to come and free their city. He did expect the king to bring a slightly bigger strike force, but since you're all confident that you can do the job, he shows you a secret path into the Black Castle. The castle is full of soldiers as well as scientists working on some very odd experiments that once they make them work will put an end to all wars. But since they're studying dragons, they probably mean they'll end them by making their side too dangerous to challenge. But since they haven't really gotten much of their work to a stage that matters, cutting them all down isn't worth getting spotted early, so Dart and his team leave them alone. While sneaking through the place, they come face to face with the soldier who had led the attack on Seles that had been done for the sole purpose of taking Shana. Everyone was expecting a fight when they saw the man, especially since he was responsible for killing so many of Dart's people. But it turns out he actually wasn't. Frugal's own personal soldiers had done that because the man who had been initially given the mission refused to let his men cause mayhem for no reason. The commander isn't trying to get mercy from Dart since regardless of who ordered it, his people still destroyed the village. All he wants is for Dart to make sure that he kills Emperor Dole. The Emperor changed after he met Lloyd, and he hasn't been leading the nation the way he had in the past. Even if it means Sandora will lose the war, he wants Dart's people to put the Emperor down. And to prove that he's serious, he gives Dart the key to the Emperor's private chambers. Those chambers are guarded by the Giganto Congo, who wants his rematch with Dart and the crew since he lost to them back in Hoax. And this time he's fully geared up. While he's strong, he still can't take a whole squad of Dragoons, and he gets beaten for a second time. Since his honor is gone now after that loss, he wants Dart to finish him off, something that Rose is perfectly fine with doing, but Dart stops her. She's pretty sure that will come back to bite the entire group in the future, but since she agreed to follow Dart's lead, she lets it go, and they head off to face Albert's uncle, the Emperor. The fact that the man killed his own brother is a pretty clear sign that he won't hesitate to kill his nephew, especially since he thinks Albert is just as much of an incompetent leader as his brother had been. Once he's finished with his work, he's pretty sure that he can build a better nation. Dart doesn't care about any of the political nonsense, he just wants to know why Dole kidnapped Shana. That was actually all Lloyd's doing. It had something to do with getting the girl before the moon that never sets starts to get bigger. But Lloyd's not the one giving the orders either. Emperor Diaz wanted the girl, but since Diaz died thousands of years ago in the Dragon campaign, Rose is pretty sure Dole is talking nonsense. Whether they believe him or not is irrelevant since he plans on killing them. And since he's also a Dragoon, because of course he is, that's a very real possibility. He loses the fight, however, and because villains seem to get really talkative during their last moments of life, he tells Dart and the others that they need to hunt down Lloyd. He's gone to the country of Tiberoa in the west, and he'll be able to give them the answers that they're looking for if they can manage to beat them out of him. With Dole dead, the war in Serdio is over, which means the next stop is Tiberoa. Hasher was going to get back to his hunt for his daughter, but the Dragoon spirit that Dole was using chooses him to be the next Dragoon, meaning his part in this story isn't over yet either. So the group makes its way to Tiberoa to hunt down Lloyd and finally get some answers. The city of Tiberoa is a pretty odd place that seems to be very fascinated by the stars. While that in itself may not be all that strange, what's weird is how scared everyone is of Princess Emily. The woman is mean to everyone from old people to pregnant women, which is very out of character since Albert had heard that the princess was a very sweet person. Fortunately, Dart and the others aren't in town to see the princess. They're hunting Lloyd, and the best place to find information on who's been coming and going in a town is the local bar, so that's where they go. The hostess, a woman named Kathy, is extremely talkative, mainly about stars, pictures of stars, shapes of stars, and pretty much anything else that you can think of that's star-related. It's hard for Dart and the others to get a word in edgewise, but when they finally get to ask about Lloyd, Kathy hasn't seen him, which could mean he's not in town, or he just made it a point to avoid her because she's annoying. In the midst of her star talk, she does say something that catches Dart and the others' attention. There's an astronomer named Fester in the city who spends most of his time studying the moon that never sets. The thing is always in the sky regardless of the time of day, and from what Kathy's heard, it has something to do with the black monster. Since these are both things that are high up on Dart's care meter, his group goes to chat with this Fester fellow. The man is perfectly fine with letting a group of strangers into his house to talk about the strange moon. The thing shouldn't exist at all since a spatial body that stays in the exact same spot regardless of how the planets and stars around it moves defies the laws of physics. Every 180 years, the moon that never sets turns red, and a moon child is said to come down and bless the world, but what actually happens is the black monster shows up and wreaks havoc across the land. Nobody knows why the story says something good will happen when the moon changes, but it's actually the reverse, and that's what Fester is trying to figure out. He would talk to Dart and the others some more, but he works for Princess Lisa and it's time for his shift, so he heads off to the castle. Since that means it's time to get out of the man's house, Dart and the others get ready to hunt for Lloyd somewhere else. Unfortunately, since there are so many bandits around, no one is allowed to leave the city at night, so the group has to hunker down and wait until the morning. There's another town in the area called Donau, so Albert thinks they should pick up their search there. To get there, they have to head through a place called the Barrens, and it's there that they run into members of the Gehrich gang, who just so happen to be the bandits that everyone was so scared of. Trying to rob Dragoons doesn't seem like the best idea, but during the fight, Mappy, probably one of the worst named bandits I've seen in a while, manages to get Dart's Dragoon spirit away from him and runs off with the thing. Rose is pretty ticked off at the fact that Dart actually got his Dragoon spirit stolen, but the only thing they can do is head to Donau and see if they can find anything out about where the bandits might be holding up. A lot of people in town have been having problems with these bandits. A woman named Kate was supposed to be getting married soon, but she's pretty sure that's not going to happen now since her fiance Lin decided to go and try to persuade the bandits to leave the city. Why people think Naruto's talk no jutsu actually works is beyond me, but the only thing he's likely to get is dead. Kate does have an idea that she thinks might save him though. Lin's dad is the mayor, so if she shows him the letter that his son left, he might send some troops out to rescue him. Dart and the others agree to take the letter to the mayor while Kate waits to see if her fiance comes back home. The mayor can't believe that his son could possibly be stupid enough to go and try to talk to the gang members. Not only is the group dangerous and secretive, their base is in the Valley of Corrupted Gravity, a place that is so dangerous that the people who go in usually never make it out. Regardless, the mayor doesn't want to abandon his son, but if he sets up a rescue party, the gang might take over the city. Since they planned on going there anyway to get his Dragoon spirit back, Dart and his crew agree to go and try to save Lin if they can. When they leave out of the mayor's house, they see a very odd, barely dressed woman beating up some members of the Gehrich gang. Her name is Meru, and she was gonna go and try to rescue Lin for Kate herself. When she finds out that Dart is on the same mission, she invites herself along. Rose isn't exactly thrilled to add the slightly annoying girl to the group, but since they're going off to fight an entire gang and Meru seems like she can take care of herself in a fight, they all head back to Tiberoa to get the king's permission to enter the Valley of Corrupted Gravity, so they can save Lin, and more importantly, get Dart's Dragoon spirit back. No one is allowed into the Valley of Corrupted Gravity without the permission of the King of Tiberoa, so Dart and his steadily growing group of travelers go to talk to him. It would be pretty easy to get a meeting if Albert wasn't trying to keep his identity a secret, but since revealing who he is may cause more harm than good, Dart and his crew have to find another way to get past the very large man whose job is to keep everyone out of the castle. Since there are so many bandits in the area, letting visitors in without someone well known to vouch for them isn't going to happen. The good news is Dart's met a few people around town who may have enough clout to get him inside, so he heads back into town to see if any of them can help him. Fester may be able to do what he needs, so Dart lets him know how he got robbed by a member of the Gehrich gang and he needs to find a way into their hideout to recover his stuff and to save Lin. Since that seems like a noble, if a bit unsafe cause, Fester takes Dart and his friends into the castle since he has a job that lets him come and go at will. He just so happens to be the caretaker of Princess Lisa. King Zior doesn't seem to be all there upstairs, but he doesn't have a problem giving Dart and his friends permission to enter the valley since they know the risks. However, since it's late and the valley's pretty dangerous even in the daytime, the king lets Dart and the others stay in the castle for the night. Princess Lisa already knew that the group was coming since she had used astrology to predict the future, something that works a lot better in fantasy worlds than it does in the real one despite what some people think, and she wanted to talk to Dart. She proves that her skills really do show her things by letting the group know that she knows exactly who Albert is, and she called on them because she needs their help. Something is wrong with her sister Emile. 6 months ago, the two of them had gone out horseback riding when her sister's horse started to act crazy and took off. Whatever made the horse go wild knocked Emile unconscious in the forest, so Lisa and her servants chased after her sister to try and catch her. When they found her, she was on the ground out cold, but she wasn't hurt. The thing is, when she woke up, her entire personality had changed, which is why she turned from a woman that everyone liked to the very insufferable person that she is now. She seems like a completely different person altogether, but their father was happy about the change. Lisa is pretty sure something odd is going on, and it has something to do with the Gehrich gang. Tiberoa has more bandits in it than most people realize, and things have been getting a lot worse lately, and all of that started after Emile changed. Lisa has read the stars, and it says that these two events are connected. Her readings also told her to never hand over the moon, which she's positive has something to do with her country's national treasure, the moon dagger. And that's supposed to be given to Emile when she turns 20 in a few days. Since that's the second divine object, both Dart and Albert are pretty sure that all of this weirdness ties back to Lloyd, which makes it even more important for them to deal with Lisa's problem. After eating dinner with the king and getting to see that Emil eats and talks like she has no home training, they call it a night and get ready to head out to get Dart's Dragoon spirit back because he's definitely gonna need it. The Valley of Corrupted Gravity is an odd place where gravity does not work the way that it's supposed to, which is a big part of why it's so dangerous. The effects of the battle between the Dragoons and the Winglies during the Dragon campaign caused nature to change permanently in the area, which shows just how much power they used during the war. The corpse of another one of the Virage is still there too, and unlike the one that Dart and the others fought in the volcano, this one is fully formed. Shana can hear the thing in her mind just like she could hear the last one, and she knows that it's gonna attack if they get close to it. Unfortunately, walking by it is the only way to get to where they need to go, and the moment they do it, it wakes up and tries to kill them. All of the Dragoons manage to hold the thing off, but when it reaches for Shana, her weird powers kick in and she blows it off of the cliff. Despite her travels, Rose has never seen anything like that before, so she doesn't understand what Shana's powers are any more than the others do. And since figuring it out now is not gonna happen, everyone makes their way out of the valley and into the Gehrich gang's base. The fact that they all assume that walking into the place would be easy is a pretty obvious sign that they don't plan very well. But it gives the gang members the opportunity to box them all in and send out one of their best fighters to deal with Dart's group. Hashel recognizes the guy's fighting stance since the only place that particular style is taught is from his village. That makes him very eager to question the guy, so after he beats him up, he gets him to explain just where he learned the fighting style, because it could be a lead to where Hashel's daughter is. The man didn't learn it from any woman, so that's another dead end, but it turns out that their boss, Gehrich, was a student of the style before he got kicked out of the school 20 years ago, which led to him becoming a bandit. Old people tend to forget things, but after hearing the story, Hashel remembers teaching a guy named Gehrich and kicking him out since he wasn't exactly the most disciplined student. Finding out that his former student started the gang that's caused all of this trouble for so many people, Hashel runs off ahead to confront the man alone, something that Dart and the others are not going to let happen, especially since Gehrich is not going to fight him one-on-one anyway. As much as Gehrich talked about having surpassed his master, he does not do well in the fight, and both he and his right-hand man take some very serious wounds. Gehrich is fine with taking his defeat like a man, but Mappy not so much, and before he croaks, he pushes a button that makes a massive statue fall on everyone. They have no time to get out of the way, but lucky for them, Congo comes running in and catches the giant statue, saving the lives of the people who a few weeks ago he was trying to kill. He doesn't consider Dart an enemy anymore, and the reason he's there is because the place the bandits had set up shop in was a very important place to the Giganto people. There used to be a lot of them living there, but all but Congo had been killed by humans. He's not a fan of humans as a whole, but when he had been younger, Emperor Dole had saved him and said that he was trying to make a world where all races were equal. It would take a strong person to bring about a world like that, and since Dart was stronger than Dole, Congo wants to see if he can become the leader who can do just that. Becoming a world leader is not even remotely one of Dart's goals, but he welcomes the giant into his crew. That's all well and good, but they still need to find Lyn and Dart's Dragoon spirit. There's a hidden room beneath the throne where the bandits had been storing all of their stuff, but before they can head down there, Gehrich uses his last breath to tell them that Princess Emil is a fake, which is why she's been acting so weird. The real princess is locked away somewhere in the castle. Unfortunately, that's all he gets to say before he dies. Hashel heads off to bury his old student while Dart and the others go looking for Lyn. They find both him and the Dragoon spirit in the secret room. So with everything that they came for present and accounted for, Dart and the others head back to Fletch to let everyone know that the Princess Emil that they've been dealing with is a fake, so they can get started on looking for the real one, if she's still alive. And that's where we're going to stop for today. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, comment, share it, and subscribe. Grab a copy of my novel on your way out, and I'll see you all next time.